Welcome to GLOBEWATCH with me, Charles Sebune. It is about 960 years old. It is one of the oldest religious orders in the world, launched within the framework of Roman Catholicism. It has tentacles in roughly 120 countries, with diplomatic relations with roughly 107 of them across the globe. Well, it even has an observer mission in the world's largest and best known multilateral organization, the United Nations. I'm talking about the Sovereign Military Order of Malta, one of the best examples of humanitarianism, operating hospitals and conducting assistance to the most needy of society worldwide. A simple question of a country disputed as a state without a territory, headed by the Prince and the Grand Master. Here comes the key question. What keeps motivating the generosity of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta to the most stressed of societies? My guest today is one of the key members of the order. The Prince de la Rochefoucauld-Montbel, the Grand Hospitalier. Welcome to GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your warm welcome too.
Back in 2016, there were roughly 441 million people worldwide affected by diseases and disasters, and the Sovereign Military Order of Malta provided assistance to plus 21,000 of them globally. What do you understand by humanism?
Well, it's a difficult question. I would say that the entity which is the Sovereign Order of Malta is something which is quite particular. First, it's based on a long history, and its mission was defined a long time ago. It was defined more than 900 years ago to serve the poor and the sick. Okay, it started in the Middle East and it moved in the Mediterranean Sea. But let's say coming up to modern times, the expansion of this service, as you're reminded, through 120 countries, has always kept the same motto: Obsequium Pauperum, Tuido Fidei. Tuido Fidei, entity of the Catholic Church, and Obsequium Pauperum, serving the poor and the sick. Basically nothing has changed. The means have changed. The technology has changed. The impact has changed. The number of activities have changed. We think that more globally we're involved with about 2,000 activities throughout the world. And this concerning 135,000 people, between volunteers, staff, over 45,000 workers, and members of the order, which are about 13,000. Don't ask me how many millions of people are served, but it's quite a number. As you're reminded, we're in 120 countries, and we've been in Cameroon for now over 60 years. A bit unknown, that is true.
Absolutely. You are 960 years old this year. This is an extraordinary journey. Years have passed, centuries have passed. Do you think that the founding statement of people like the Blessed Gerard still has purpose in the 21st century world of Twitter?
Well, I would think yes. What is our motto? Our motto is Obsequium Pauperum, the service of the poor. And the point of view is within the Catholic Church. Catholicism still exists in the world after 2,000 years. Nobody is mentioning that it's going to disappear. Unfortunately, poverty is still, I would say, on word headlines. Even if we could work around with figures and numbers to try and change something, poverty, sickness, loneliness still exist. And so the two purposes of the Sovereign Order of Malta, as I reminded, being a religious order and an order with sovereign prerogatives, is still on the first line. It's still our mission. It was our mission for, you said, over 900 years, and it will be still our mission for the coming 100, 200, or 300 years.
Let me sort out some confusion. At one moment, the Sovereign Military Order of Malta is considered a religious order within the Roman Catholic establishment. And when I cross the road, take the zebra crossing on the other end of the road, I understand that it is a sovereign state without a territory. How does that operate?
That is the luxury of 900 years, over 900 years of existence. In 1113, it wasn't yesterday, it was just over 900 years ago, the Pope Pascal II stated that the hospitalers, those who were looking after the hospital or the hostel for pilgrims in Jerusalem, could become a religious order.
People wounded during the crusade and many other things.
Not only wounded, I would say that even pilgrims, masses of pilgrims going to Jerusalem, masses of people wanted to go and see where Christ died, where Christ was born in Bethlehem, going on the ways and the paths of Christ.
Some of these issues are well captioned by Geoffrey Chaucer in his.
Well, we were there before. We were there before.
That is to say, the world after that.
Yeah, but we were there before the Crusaders came, because we were hosting pilgrims. After a decree which was between Europe, or more or less France, and the Ottomans, which was signed around 900.
The Byzantine Empire.
Oh no, it wasn't with the Byzantine. It was with those who were occupying Jerusalem, which were Ottoman, or Surudik.
Okay.
But this is far in the history. When the Crusaders, to make it simple, left Holy Land in 1292, the order didn't fully come back to Europe. They stopped in Cyprus, and then they settled in Rhodes, where they kept their mission of looking after the poor and the sick, but having also a quality which was given also to defend the Christians. And in Rhodes, they got a certain sovereignty.
Can you just answer my question very quickly? Where do we draw the line between a sovereign state without a territory and a religious order? That is my bone of contention.
Well, that started in, I would say, in Rhodes. In Rhodes, we had governmental power on the island, with thousands of inhabitants, etc., etc., and then having a total independence from what we could say the church structures, dioceses, bishops, as some former orders, religious orders. They were not, let's say, integrated in a diocese. They were independent. Independent for their funds, independent for their membership, independent for their mission. This went on in Rhodes. It went on after the loss of Rhodes in 1522. It continued in the island of Malta. And that is why our name is very complicated, because we are the Order of St. John of Jerusalem, where we started, of Rhodes, where we went through, and of Malta. And we have kept the name of Malta. That is why, when you want to say it in a short way, you can say the Order of Malta.
Let's take this question. If I describe you as a state without a territory, will I be taken to court?
No, not at all. We are a subject of international law. Okay, that's a definition. What is a subject of international law? A subject of international law has a status of a state because answering to some of the requirements of being a state. But it is true that the order lacks on one, we don't have a territory. We lost our last territory in 1798 when Bonaparte stopped in Malta going to Egypt. And from that date, we lost our territory. But we never lost the elements which were attached to a sovereignty. That is, relations with other states, exchange of ambassadors, bilateral relations, multilateral relations. And this part at the same time of being a religious order, has developed since the last 70 years enormously. You can imagine now today we have, let's say, 107 bilateral relations which go from Cameroon to Germany, from Russia to Jordan, special relations with Canada, ambassador-level relations with Mexico and all South America.
I am told that you are one of the best examples of humanitarianism in the current world in which we are living. One Cameroonian professor specialized in religious history, Jean-Paul Messina, described that since the 11th century, he doesn't think there is any humanitarian NGO, or if you like, association in the world which has the best medical expertise to assist people more than the sovereign military order of Malta. How do you work in that domain?
Well, firstly, we're not an NGO. We are a sovereign state. We are subject of public international law, and we rejoice of bilateral relations like states and multilateral relations, having a seated observer.
My question is this: what makes your unique medical contribution to the world?
Well, that's where I was going to. I just reminded that. I wanted to remind that we were not an NGO.
Absolutely.
And that is the big difference. The relations that we have allow us, these relations, specific relations, allow us to have a closer relation with a country which welcomes us and with which we can work to bring some support or bring some expertise. When we settle and we agree with a country, let's say in a crisis, first we have an agreement of the state, not as an international non-governmental organization. There will be a relation between our ambassador with the ambassador of the local country, and then at the level of the Ministry of Health or Ministry of Home Office, for example, or at the head of the state. And these agreements will allow us to settle in some way which is specific of the order. Being a Catholic institution at the same time, we have a Catholic approach on healthcare. When we have an agreement with the country, we can say, well, we don't agree on some UN application, or from some UNESCO application, or from some WHO application, because it's against our beliefs, but we want to continue the service we are rendering in the country.
The Prince, let's take some questions which have to do with governance. We'll be separating in a moment. You are headquartered in Rome, in a very small palace, well guarded, full of history. I just wonder how you are governed. The title of your president is the Prince and the Grand Master, answerable to the Pope, and he has a lifetime function. But the last one was dismissed by the Pope. Can you explain to me why a president of a republic will be called the Grand Master and at the same time has life functions, but somebody can terminate his function? A lot of contradictions. Can you help me take out
I must say it's not very easy. But as you said, and you're very right to say, you named a president of a republic. We're not a republic, so we can't have a president. That's for one example. The name of Grand Master is an old name. It was a name that was given 900 years ago. It was a name which was given to some orders, religious orders. The Teutonic order had that. The Templar order had that. The order of St. Lazarus had the same title. And so this title was given. When the order became independent, more independent by having a land, Rhodes, or then Malta, the title of Prince was given to the Grand Master. And you could add his full name when you want to talk to him is His Most Eminent Highness. Why eminent? Because the Grand Master Vignacourt defeated the Ottomans in 1488 and so protected Christian settlements on the east of the Mediterranean Sea. And to thank him...
Just like Charles Martel did
Like Martel for the French, exactly.
734
Yes.
AD after Jesus,
Yeah, well,
which prevented the entry of Islam in the country like modern day
Well,
France.
continuing going up, because
yeah.
it was settled in the south of France.
Absolutely.
So, it was stopped. It was a battle against Suleiman, and in 1488, to thank this
Suleiman
victory,
the Magnificent.
Suleiman of the Ottoman Empire.
Absolutely.
The Pope, thanking Vignacourt, Grand Master, gave him the rank of cardinal. That is why there's the eminent, because a cardinal today is his eminency. And so that's why the Grand Master has this pile of titles coming through. But it has another title, which is much less known, which is the poorest servant of the Christ. That is another title, which is less flashy. But it is a proper title of the Grand Master.
The last two questions. I understand that your member has roughly permanent one, 13,500, roughly 80,000 volunteers around the world, with about 42,000 medics working in many countries across the globe. I just want to understand equally, Google says that there are just 2 citizens in your country. How do I become a member? Charles Ebune, the presenter of GLOBEWATCH, wants to become a member of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta.
Okay, to be a member, first you have to be Catholic.
That is the first stage of initiation.
Initiation, you have to be Catholic. Second, you have to serve the order. To serve the order is to serve the poor and the sick. It can be a neighborhood service, bringing some food to elder people. It can be a technical, a qualification, being a lawyer for those who can't pay lawyers, a doctor to medical care. It can be any person who has a qualification, professional qualification or hard qualification, just to be serving. This morning, the nuncio here, Monsignor Murat, just reminded something very simple. He said, the great difference of any other organization and the Order of Malta is in its service, through the poor and the sick, he sees Christ suffering. This is a Catholic
So
organization.
apart from those 2 conditions, there is no any other condition I have to fulfill?
I don't know any other. You're invited, you don't come up with there's no advertising looking for members.
Okay.
No, it just goes in that sort of sense. We have, may I say, an association, because the entities of the order are spread out throughout the world through different entities, which are our own NGOs, if we could use that term, which are national associations, which are under 2 laws, local law and militency law, which is the law of the order, because we have a constitution. We have a country in Africa, which is an association, which is in Senegal.
Okay. You are extremely very rich. You have a budget of roughly 1.8 billion euros every year. You don't have a territory where you have gold, you have oil, you have banana, you have timber, you exploit to sell. Where do you get all of that money?
I would say there are, if I could use that very common word, different pockets. In Europe, where we run hospitals, home for elder people, home for disabled, social services, camps for refugees, our services are considered as delegation of public service. So the countries pay. They pay us to do the service. Where we have other facilities is public generosity. We have millions of people who give money to the Order of Malta as they give money to the Red Cross, or they gave money to Save the Children, or other entities like that. We have also mécénat, that is, companies, worldwide companies, who help us. We have some examples of when we built our new hospital in Bordeaux-Salé in Ivory Coast. Well, 2 companies, local companies, helped us in the building of the hospital. So all this is added up. the order is represented throughout the world through 100 entities, and as you were saying, over 135,000 people. So it's a big entity. Okay, figures are important. I'm a French citizen as well as being a Maltese member. The two citizenship were given by the State of Italy to the Grand Chancellor and to the Grand Master. I, as being a high charge, on my diplomatic passport, which is recognized by 108 countries, and Cameroon also, 107 countries, Cameroon too, I came with that passport here, my nationality is SMOM, Sovrano Militare Ordine di Malta. Donc Sovereign Military Order of Malta.
Okay. The Prince, thank you very much indeed for being guest on GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you very much for your invitation.
And I hope to see you either in Rome at your headquarters in the days to come or any other place on earth.
And maybe at a football match. Why not?
You're welcome. Donald Kaberuka, welcome to GLOBEWATCH.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Pleasure.
Fundamentally, what should my viewers in Mogadishu, in Islamabad, in Yaoundé understand as state fragility?
Thank you. Before I come to that point, I want to say that in the last 20 years, the division between rich countries and low-income countries has narrowed significantly, but we still have 1 billion people in poverty, but largely because of the number of people living in the countries affected by fragility and conflict. And we still estimate that by 2030, probably up to 30% of population in the world will be living in countries affected by fragility. I want to make sure that we understand that fragility is not the same thing as conflict. Conflict can lead to fragility, it does. But a country like Haiti is considered very fragile, but it has never had a conflict, an armed conflict at least.
Because of natural disasters.
There are many environmental issues, political issues, which lead to the state being unable to fulfill its responsibilities. I also want to make sure that we understand the difference between fragile states and failed states. It's not the same thing. Now, we at the Commission, we're looking at the conditions which make countries recover from fragility and what the international community can do about it, because the approaches so far don't seem to have worked. Now, with the extent of fragility now from the Middle East to Yemen to Libya to the Sahel to many other places in Southwest Asia, we need to find out new ways of addressing those countries, and this is what we have done.
You were given a yearly mandate by the London School of Economics and Oxford University. I just wonder, your mission will be ending this June. What principally are you bringing in tackling global problems?
I would say there were three, perhaps, very fundamental findings. Because up to now, when a state is trying to emerge from fragility or conflict, we have thought that money was always a problem, or that money alone can deliver the outcomes. And that has always been accompanied by a set of preconditions for what these countries should do to recover from fragility. And thirdly, the people of the country have always been behind rather than in front. So let me pick up the question about money. Of course, when you help a country to recover from fragility, you need a lot of resources. But resources on their own cannot deliver recovery. And indeed, many of these fragile states are fragile because of fight over rent, over natural resources. Indeed, a country like Libya, which exports at full production close to 2 million barrels per day, does not need money for its reconstruction. But it is a fragile state, and fragility from Libya has spread out in neighboring countries. So we need to do something different. And the first thing we have to do is to let the people of the country take the lead. Take the lead maybe the kind of institutions they build may not be perfect, may not resemble the institutions in Denmark, but they'll be the institutions for which they themselves have built consensus around. Often we have rushed into trying to impose Western-style institutions very early, when the countries are not ready, when they're still building consensus. The second thing I want to say is the role of business. Because far too often, recovery from fragility has been made to be an issue of states. But you know, look at Somalia, which has been in fragility or even failing state for the last 35 years. What has kept Somalia going are the business people and the money coming from abroad, from the diaspora. So we do think that in the future, instead of having these conferences on peace and stabilization, where you have government and donors, we don't have government and businesses who have a stake in the country,